can get you back inside your head. Before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats is restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a knife, to give into the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
And good morning. It is Thursday, June 4th. You are watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. Thanks for watching this morning. I'm the People's Pundit, Rich Parrish. You guys can follow me on Twitter if you don't already, right there at Peoples_Pundit. I changed around a couple of things today because I was sick of this thing being like right up on me. And I'm not sure I like it better or not yet. Let's see what you guys think. Let's start with Rod Rosenstein, because if the country wasn't burning right now, and if there wasn't all of this racial animosity, and that was the story, it's funny how they keep doing this. It's funny how these stories keep cropping up when there are these big bombshells that prove they're liars and have been lying to the American people and defrauding them for 3 years. It's funny how these stories keep coming up, but they do, right? So yesterday, Rod Rosenstein goes before the Senate Judiciary Committee, and it gets basically no coverage. There's already an incentive there for the media to ignore this because it shows how far off base they were. More than off base covering the Russia collusion story. It's more than being off base. It shows how much they're liars. They're just flat liars. And there were a couple nuggets in this story that were bombshells or just jaw dropping. You know, he just admitted some of these things you would have expected maybe him to have danced around a little bit instead of just flatly, yup, that's true. I didn't know that. Yup, that's true. I didn't look at that. And we're going to go through a couple of them. But first and foremost, the biggest one is that Rosenstein admitted that there was no evidence of collusion in August of 2017. No evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. A treasonous plot to subvert the democracy of America. Trump being a traitor, like we heard, for 3 years. He also admitted basically that he didn't read, or so he says. First, he said he read the FISA application. Then he said he didn't read it. And then finally, he settled on the answer of, and we're going to look at some of this tape, but finally, he settled on the answer of, you know what? I didn't read every page. I kind of trusted the FBI. And Ted Cruz just tore into this guy yesterday. He tore into him. So we're going to focus on Ted Cruz because Lindsey Graham, if you want to give him credit for even calling him and calling other people, go right ahead. But the guy is getting a little bit hard to defend at this point. He says, I don't believe you were in on this, which is something that Ted Cruz says. And we'll go over a couple of these quotes, but let me read a couple of sentences verbatim from the story. All right. So former Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein admitted on Wednesday there was no evidence of collusion by August of 2017. Despite the evidence not supporting the allegation, the Trump campaign colluded with Russians to influence the 2016 election. He still allowed the investigation to continue for another year and a half. And this is me now going off script. More than that, folks, more than that, he signed off on increasing the scope of this investigation. So think back, because context always matters. Think back to Trump saying, witch hunt, tweeting every day 2 words, witch hunt, and the media going off. And then Republicans like Lindsey Graham rushing to Robert Mueller's defense. Robert Mueller, Bob Mueller, like they're best friends or something. Bob Mueller doesn't conduct witch hunts. No, I don't believe it's a witch hunt. Dianne Feinstein, Senator Coons from Delaware, and others run to Lindsey Graham, run to Thom Tillis, now both of whom apparently feel like they're on the Trump train 100%. Especially Thom Tillis, because he can't win North Carolina without Trump's help. He'll probably lose. But with him, he's not. I mean, we favor him now, but that's because he took his head out of his butt. If he would have went against Trump on this, he would have been dead in the water. But they rushed to these senators, your favorite establishment Republicans, and they say, support us on this resolution to protect Bob Mueller. Support us on a resolution that seeks to limit what is squarely within presidential authority, and that is to fire anybody who works at the Justice Department. Robert Mueller is not above the law, and Donald Trump was never beneath the law. But apparently he was here, and that's the whole damn point. Anyway, the big admission is that, which is the hearing is about investigating wrongdoing, or supposedly investigating wrongdoing during the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane investigation that inevitably led to the appointment of Special Counsel Robert Mueller, the cover-up artist. And that's all he's ever, that's what his history has always been. Robert Mueller has never been someone who got to the bottom of corruption. That's John Durham. He has a career doing that. Robert Mueller has always been, both in the private and public sector, somebody with enough credibility that people who want to paper over something wrong can go to get to do that. That's the kind of guy he is. Whether it's for the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston, or it's for the NFL. That's who Robert Mueller is. So anyway, Graham asked him the whole concept that the campaign was colluding with the Russians. There was no there in August of 2017. Do you agree or not? And he replies, I agree with that general statement, Now, folks, we showed you all of the testimony from the House Intelligence Committee's investigation into Russia's interference in the 2016 election. Susan Rice, all of them, none of them had any evidence. There was never any evidence of this. You don't have to take my word for it. You can go and read their own testimony. There was never any evidence that the Russians removed anything from the DNC server. That's how much that's how far down the rabbit hole we went. And yet Lindsey Graham still allows him to say, I agree with the general statement. Well, what do you not agree with? What generally would you say is the exception to that? Because there wasn't any. From intel to actual law enforcement evidence, there was never any indication of collusion. The concession was just one of many that came during the hearing. On several occasions, he admitted having little knowledge about the FBI probe. This is the guy, Jeff Sessions, the coward, steps aside to let the wolves in against to surround Donald Trump because he had his own problems. For those of you who don't know the backstory, that white hat stuff was, oh my God. If there was ever anyone you should unfollow on Twitter right now, it's the people who amassed huge followings telling you that Jeff Sessions, Rod Rosenstein, and Robert Mueller were all working together in a plot to subvert the deep state, to get in there with their hooks and claws. And they're really on Trump's side. That was always fiction. Worse than fiction. These were people who never knew anything. We talk to people, they don't know who they are. Do you have any idea who may be talking to so-and-so on Twitter now with 500,000 followers, running these crazy conspiracy theories that Michael Flynn just, bankrupted himself for the good of the country in some crazy twisted plot that has no evidence to support? Who? That's what we get. Who? Who's that? Oh, that guy on Twitter. Nah, I don't know who the hell he is. Never spoke to him in my life. And now we have to wait for all of this to come out. And it's sad because really it divided the Trump base for years. It absolutely hurt them during the 2018 election, at least in some. The issue there was healthcare. That's what cost Republicans the House. Their failure to make good on their promise to repeal Obamacare and replace it with something else that protected pre-existing conditions. But there were absolutely peripheral races where that hurt. And we've gone over them before, California among them. Anyway, so he just pretended like he had no knowledge on this stuff. And it does seem, at least to some degree, like we could believe him, at least on some of it. He seemed like an incompetent idiot, but we're going to get to it. So is he incompetent or is he just corrupt? I'm going to tell you exactly what it is in a second. He also threw other actors under the bus, claiming that fired former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe was, quote, was not fully candid with me about the Bureau's proceedings. Mr. Rosenstein also told the committee that he was not aware of the exculpatory evidence exonerating Carter Page and would not have signed the FISA warrant if he had been. And this is Graham's question again, if you knew then what you know now, would you have signed the warrant application? And he replies, no, I would not. Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, otherwise known as FISA for short, allows intelligence agencies to collect information on foreign targets abroad. It also created the FISC, which is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. Foreign targets abroad was always the point of FISA. Mr. Rosenstein at one point suggested that he was not familiar with the contents of that FISA warrant. Renewal, because he did not sign the initial one. He signed the renewal, and we'll get into the dates in a second. Though had earlier claimed to have read it. He later amended his testimony to claim that he had not read, quote, every page. My recollection of it was actually fairly persuasive, he said. It had already been approved 3 times. This was just a reauthorization. Senator Ted Cruz delivered scathing remarks against what he characterized as a corrupt investigation. At this point now, we know it is. That is a generous way of referring to this investigation. And he said, and we're going to play Ted in a minute here, 2 clips from Ted Cruz. He said, quote, you came into a profoundly politicized world, yet all of this was allowed to go forward under your leadership. That, unfortunately, leads to only 2 possible conclusions. Either that you were complicit in the wrongdoing or that your performance of your duties was grossly negligent. Let's just play Ted Cruz for a hot second here. I want the shorter one, the smaller clip, and then we'll come back because we're going to answer which it is. I'm going to tell you which one it is by telling you more. That was not even brought up in the hearing. Stunning that the senators didn't ask basic questions. Ted Cruz only has a certain amount of time. Each senator only has a certain amount of time. He cannot answer every damn question. But the chairman was lost in the sauce. Let's play Ted Cruz, then I'll come back and make my big mouth heard.
Prior to 2016 and 2017, the worst known instance of abuse of power by an administration was Richard Nixon's abuse of his administration to target his political enemies. By any measure, what the Obama-Biden administration did in 2016 and 2017 makes everything Richard Nixon even contemplated pale in comparison. And Richard Nixon rightfully faced impeachment and ultimately resigned as a consequence of his misconduct. The evidence that has been made public has made clear that the Obama administration targeted his political opponents, targeted President Trump and his campaign, unleashed, weaponized, and politicized the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the intelligence community, and that the decision-making to do so went right up to the very top.
Okay, let's explore this idea that what Ted Cruz just said, okay? That what Obama, Biden did, which Biden did know, he knew about, all right? Let's cut the crap. He pretends like he's like the drunk uncle in the corner who doesn't know what the hell's going on. Back then, Joe Biden was still rather sharp. He may be a shadow of his former self now, but he was still rather sharp back then. And there is no way any of this would have happened without the approval of the president. It isn't like it wasn't like it is now, where Trump doesn't even have full control of his own of the executive branch in the federal government. Barack Obama played ball, so they played ball with him. Donald Trump does not play ball, so they do what they do to him. Now, whether you agree with Donald Trump or not has nothing to do with the trueness of that statement. So let's look at what Ted Cruz just said, that what the Obama-Biden administration did is way worse than, by any measure, what Richard Nixon did. Richard Nixon had private thugs break in to a political rival's headquarters. He did not use the powerful levers of the federal government to subvert, first to stop a political opponent, and then to subvert them once they got into office, which Obama did. We know now from that January 5th meeting, we know that's what he was intending to do, to preserve the insurance policy. That is what that meeting was about, which Susan Rice memorialized in an email meant to cover her butt, which Ted Cruz brings up actually in the next clip we're going to play here. But never did Richard Nixon use the powerful intelligence, the weapons of a powerful intelligence community, multiple agencies, to undermine and persecute his political opposition and then those who were coming after him. At that time, Richard Nixon had the world in his hand. He had just won re-election by a landslide. It was a huge re-election. He wasn't really dealing with an actual political opponent that will take over during what we have always seen is a peaceful transition of power. What these people did was deny Donald Trump, deny his supporters, his voters, deny the country the peaceful transition of power we have seen for over 2 centuries. And then they denied him his duly elected right to govern. It has never happened. This makes Watergate look like Boy Scout shoplifting for a candy bar. This is not even comparable. For starters, the insurance policy, that has happened before. That's what J. Edgar Hoover was always known for, having his dossier, his folder filled with crap. And every time somebody was elected, he'd walk on up Pennsylvania Avenue, sit down with them and say, here's the folder. You're going to play ball. This is what we know about you. You're going to play ball. You're going to leave the FBI alone. You're not going to touch my agency. You're going to let me do things the way I want to do them in the agency. You're going to let me run things how I want to run them. And you're going to leave me the hell alone. And you're going to leave my people alone. And you're going to make sure that you sign off on budget stuff. And they would say, woo, you saw about that woman, huh? You know about that woman. You know about that deal. All right, Hans. All right, Hoover. Go back to your office. You'll have no problems from me. So that kind of stuff happened. And then J. Edgar Comey did the same kind of thing, obviously. We now know that. That's what that briefing about the dossier was. That was crap. The president thought he was being blackmailed. Comey wasn't alerting him to just some of the things that you'll have to face. That was an attempt to blackmail Donald Trump. And if he didn't play ball, they had their insurance policy. This isn't even remotely close. And back during the age of Richard Nixon, in the era of Richard Nixon, the intelligence communities were not what they are today. They are a rogue entity of this government. They obviously cannot be controlled by you. And that's how you all should look at this. This really isn't about Donald Trump. This is about your ability to say enough is enough when you want to say enough is enough. I've had it with the direction this country is going. I've had it with the direction the political class is taking us. I want somebody from the outside to go in there and change things. The status quo is unacceptable to us collectively as a sovereign, the voter. That's what this is about. Donald Trump is just a man. He's just an actor in this story. It is not whether or not you like Donald Trump that should form your opinion on what happened here. This should scare the hell out of all of you. If you're Bernie Sanders supporters, do you think they're going to let Bernie go in there and do anything that they don't approve of? Or are they going to do what they did to Donald Trump, to Bernie Sanders? First of all, my own personal opinion, I think Bernie would play ball. The guy has shown twice now he can't even put away an opponent. He can't do it. He's not a champion. He doesn't fight hard enough. He just doesn't. He could have put Joe Biden away. He didn't. He was not willing to do what was necessary. He wasn't willing to do what was necessary to go after Hillary Clinton. I think the whole country doesn't, has heard enough about your damn emails. Obviously not, because she got her butt kicked in November. They couldn't stand her. It was because of that kind of two-tier justice system. Different rules apply to Hillary Clinton than they do to us. That's what happened. No, at least it's part of it. It reinforced the entire narrative that surrounded that election. So Bernie has twice now proven himself not to be a champion. But what if one day your champion comes along? What if one day your champion rises? And they're going to fundamentally change, as Barack Obama promised to do. They're going to fundamentally change our capitalist system, how our democracy works, whatever it is about Bernie Sanders that he was promising to you that you loved. What if one day a champion rises for you? You think they're going to play? Do you think that Trump supporters are going to be around to say, we're with you, it happened to us? Or maybe you'll just get an I told you so. How would you like it is the point. And I know there are a lot of good, decent Biden supporters out there. I know there are. Think about for a second what you're going to rubber stamp if you allow this to continue. If we allow this to go unpunished, unchecked, it's over. It's over. They have rewritten our social contracts, and we sat by and let them do it. We let them, and we deserve it. We deserve what comes next. This one's a little bit longer from Ted Cruz, but I want to play it because he nails it. And look at the smug face on Rod. Look at his smug face. Just watch him. And watching it, I got, I wanted to, but Ted Cruz snaps back at him for it. He does not let it go unchecked. There's about 2 minutes, so bear with us, all right?
It had a responsibility not to allow political targeting. Let me ask you, did it strike you as strange, and my time has expired, so I'm going to leave this as the last question. Did it strike you as strange that the FBI and the Department of Justice was going after a 3-star general, the incoming national security advisor to the president, who they already said they were going to dismiss the case against, and their predicate for all of this is the Logan Act, which you know perfectly well is an unconstitutional law that no one has ever been prosecuted under in the history of the Department of Justice, and should have been laughed out of the room in any responsible Department of Justice if someone had suggested we're going to go after the incoming national security advisor for violating the Logan Act, which says an American citizen can't talk to a foreign leader. I guarantee you today, right now, John Kerry is violating the Logan Act. Now, fortunately, it's an unconstitutional law, so who cares? Why did you not laugh this out of the room, and why didn't you get to answers on this? Why did you let this pile of partisan lies consume the country for 2 years?
Senator, I appreciate you've packed a lot into your question, and I know the time is limited. First of all, Senator, I think it's not accurate to say that we didn't rock the boat. As you may be aware, when I went into that job with Attorney General Sessions, we actually made a lot of significant changes. It wasn't just about the Russia investigation. There was a lot more going on in the Department of Justice. And so I would not have been reluctant in any way to rock the boat if I believed that there was something improper going on. With regard to General Flynn, to take that particular issue, Senator, my understanding at the time that I arrived was that General Flynn had lied to the Vice President and to FBI agents, and that, I believe, was the primary issue that was under investigation at the time. I didn't know all the background that appears in the pleading that was filed by the U.S. Attorney in D.C.
But you didn't bother to ask. You didn't actually bother to drill in and say, show me the background. You know, this may be the most important case we've got in the whole country. Let me actually do more than just rubber stamp the document put in front of me.
I don't believe I was rubber stamping, Senator, and I fully appreciate your concern, and obviously you always wish you could have done more, but we did have 70,000.
Yeah, enough, right? Just enough. It was long enough. But the point Ted Cruz made is sound. So why, if we're going to believe he didn't know this stuff and he just, then why? What was it about him, right? That he just didn't look into it. And who cares about all of the other changes him and Sessions made? They're all irrelevant. This was the central issue for almost 3 years. This dominated wall-to-wall coverage. And he, by the way, with that Michael Flynn thing, is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Think about it. Remember Brian Ross tanked the Dow for an afternoon when Joy Behar on The View claimed that Brian Ross had information? Well, Michael Flynn is flipped and he's going to tell Robert Mueller everything about collusion. He had no place to even be in that investigation. That's the point of that all. And we showed you the transcripts from the House Intelligence interviews. They had nothing on Michael Flynn. Nothing. The idea he even lied is bunk because how they asked that question. They weren't talking just specifically about sanctions, by the way. For those of you who don't know it, they were talking about a greater agreement. And within that agreement was sanctions. So when they backdoor asked him, well, did you discuss sanctions? That agreement was a big umbrella. And in there was sanctions. So that is even in question. But the point is they had nothing on him. Susan Rice admitted that under oath. They all did. There was nothing on him. DNI query, no derogatory information. CIA, no derogatory information. So the point Cruz is trying to make here is what business did they even have moving forward? And think back, folks, just think back. And some of you know how I feel about Trump's tweeting. Some of it is just reckless and there's just no point to do it. It seems petty to me. Kind of like the thing with Mattis yesterday, whom we'll talk about too a little bit today. It just seems a little bit petty. But still, the guy is sitting there tweeting witch hunt, witch hunt. It's not a witch hunt. It's not, including Republicans who allowed this to go. So if you're a Trump supporter and you're pissed off about this, you should be looking at your own damn party too. Because right now they're only all of a sudden magically finding their way back to the side of Donald Trump because they fear a repeat of 2016. They fear all these polls will be wrong. And people like Kelly Ayotte, Mark Kirk, they'll suffer their fate. And Mr. Forgot already. Forgot him already in Nevada. Forgot him already. They fear that will happen to them. Now, some people I do think are kind of sincere, but others are not. Where were they when they allowed this to happen? Do you think if the roles were reversed and it was a Democratic president, but a Republican, if the Democrats had control of the chamber and their president was in the White House, and Republicans somehow managed because the intelligence community was controlled by conservatives? I know this is crazy, but just imagine it for a second. Let's play the imagine if game again. Do you think for 1 minute they wouldn't have had this information by now and they wouldn't have put an end to it? I don't mean by now, by August of 2017. He had no idea that the FBI had put the brakes on their angle with Michael Flynn in January of 2017, months earlier, or at least so he claims. So what's going on here with Rod Rosenstein? It's 10:31, and I'll tell you about it going through some emails when we get done with this short little blurt kind of break. We're not going to take like a break right now. I'm just going to go through my break, but it's 10:31. You are watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit, and I am the People's Pundit, Rich Barish. You guys can follow me right there on Twitter if you don't already, at Peoples_Pundit. Don't forget, folks, to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We have a little bit more to go before we hit that first milestone. You guys are doing great. I mean, we hit a nice one yesterday. Let's keep going. We're almost there. We're almost to where I want and need us to be for the first hit. And we did it rather quick, within just a few weeks of having this. With the channel, it's been there forever, but we did nothing with it. So it's pretty remarkable. Keep it up. Share it with friends and family that you think may like the show, and we love you for it. Don't forget to like the page People's Pundit Daily on Facebook if you are a Facebook user. And then, of course, the best way to support the show is to subscribe to PPD. That's how we fund this all. That's how it's done. And you can do that by going to peoplespunditdaily.com or going to the short link. Take the short link, pbdnews.us/subscribe. pbdnews.us/subscribe. That's how we bring you what we're going to bring you in a little bit when we talk about Michigan. What is, are there valid concerns about voter fraud in Michigan, inactive voters, dead voters? We have these tools because you guys support us having this. That's it. The media will never show you this. Nobody else will ever show you what we show you. That it's just a reality. A lot of other alternative media people, good people that do good work, there is nobody out there who will get their hands on this stuff, period. And as far as news go, we're not news du jour people. We're a data journalism site. Get some data for your dollar. That's the slogan over there. We can't promise you we'll cover everything because we don't have a staff at the New York Times, but we will promise you that we will cover what's important and what matters, and we'll do it better than most others. All right? And the same thing goes with Rod Rosenstein, which I want to return to right now, because no other story yesterday gave you the angle that we gave you. So what is the answer to Ted Cruz's question? Either that you were complicit in the wrongdoing or that your performance of your duties was grossly negligent. Well, emails which were obtained in October 2019, we reported on these. They were obtained by Judicial Watch in a lawsuit. They show Rosenstein and Mueller, Robert Mueller, were secretly in contact with one another the days before, during, and after Robert Mueller met with the president. He met with President Trump in the White House, and that meeting in and of itself is a source of controversy. It was also the days before, during, and after the appointment of Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller goes to meet with the president, and he claims he's just there to have a discussion. That is a lie. He lied under oath. I know it is. I know it for a fact. The president says, no, he was there to be interviewed for the position of the director of the FBI. He claims he wasn't. The emails bear out the president's version of the story. Not to mention witnesses. We know the president is telling the truth. Robert Mueller lied, and he lied under oath. The plan was to install Robert Mueller, who was the mentor of Jim Comey. They are personal friends. It was against DOJ policy to even appoint Robert Mueller as a special counsel. It was a violation of DOJ guidelines, which we also showed you and report first, by the way. The first to do in detail. That was in and of itself a violation. And in an email to Robert Mueller on May 12, 2017, Rod Rosenstein tells Mueller, the boss and his staff do not know about our discussions. The boss and his staff. Now, it's unclear whether the boss was a reference to then Attorney General Jeff Sessions or President Trump himself. But does it really matter? Does it really matter? It's deception. This is clearly an indication of deception. Those discussions, they do not want the president to know about. Again, the point was put Robert Mueller in Jim Comey's job. If not, what are we going to do about it? Anyway, the boss and his staff do not know about our discussions. He tells Mueller on May 12th, 2017. And just for you wise, you know what's out there, you can go look at the document. It's page 57. It's unclear, again, whether it's Sessions or Trump. However, the emails indicate that Mr. Mueller was appointed special counsel after the president refused to give him the job. At that time, too, you go through Rosenstein's emails and you will see clear as day, one email after the other. Lawyers that are, part of the DC swamp. They're swamp lawyers. They're the scumbags that we see every day, or every scam that we hear about. These are the political class, the big law firm guys, tons of them, and they're pressuring Rod Rosenstein. And they're saying, you know what? For the good of your reputation, Rod, for the good of your reputation, there's only one thing you can do here. Appoint a special counsel. And by the way, the vast majority of them have reached a preconceived conclusion without an investigation that Donald Trump is a traitor who colluded with Russia. They all believe it, all of them. And they said the only thing you can do here to get to the bottom of this plan to subvert our democracy is to appoint a special counsel. And basically, if you don't, you will lose your place at the Tea Party. You will not be invited anymore for tea and crumpets. That is what they did to him. And it's he is bombarded with them. People calling the assistant saying, so-and-so called again. He wants to talk to you about this. Yeah, I know what he wants. All right, I'll call him back. Whatever. Then you'll see an email. Thank you for the time. I just want to again email you to impose on you that the country really needs a special counsel. The country's at stake here. Your reputation is at stake. So eventually, there's an email, and it's dated May 16, 2017. And it's back to Mark Philippe, who is one of them, by the way. And he writes to Mark Philippe, who is an attorney at Kirkland and Ellis, which may sound familiar to you. That's one of those law firms we keep talking about. And by the way, tons of these people were Clinton allies. They're all swamp creatures. But he writes back to Mark because he can't take it anymore. And he says, I am with Mueller. He shares my view. Duty calls. Duty calls. Sometimes the moment chooses us. Let me me read this again. I am with Mueller. He shares my views. Duty calls. Sometimes the moment chooses us. And by the way, for the wise guys out there, document page 54. It's all linked on the story. It's probably still the featured story. If not, it's down in the political section and you can scroll down to see it. It's linked in the YouTube section, description section to this show. In May 2019, we now know Attorney General William Barr assigned U.S. Attorney John H. Durham in Connecticut, who actually, unlike Mueller, does have a reputation of rooting out corruption. He is basically the deep state killer. We'll see if he kills it this time around. But unlike Robert Mueller, who has a reputation for covering up dirt, John Durham has a reputation for digging it up, digging it out, rooting it out. So Barr appointed Durham to investigate the origins of and potential wrongdoings in the Russia probe. By October of 2019, Mr. Durham had expanded that investigation. In December, and this is getting back to the FISA warrants that Rod claims to not have read every page of. At first, he said he did. Then he said he didn't. Then he amended it. I mean, I don't know how you could get that wrong. Did you or did you not read the damn FISA warrant? The application for the renewal. This isn't something he should have to equivocate about. He knows he's going to be called before the Senate Judiciary Committee. What's your answer? Did you or did you not read it? In December, the Justice Department Office of the Inspector General released a, quote, and this is the title of it, review of 4 FISA applications and other aspects of the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane investigation. Legacy Media incorrectly used the language in the report to claim the findings exonerated the FBI of political bias, which Inspector General Horowitz would later push back on under oath during questioning an exchange between him and Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri, who flatly asked him, like the media is claiming, did this thing exonerate the FBI of political bias? Is that what you're telling us? No, that is not what I'm telling you, is how he responded. Horowitz found, quote, 7 inaccuracies and omissions, unquote, in just the first of the 4 total warrant applications. The latter 3 contained an additional 10 additional major inaccuracies. And I'm trying to state the timeline here because context always matters. In January, the next month, the following month, the Justice Department admitted that there was, quote, insufficient predication to establish probable cause, unquote. In response, Judge James Boasberg, who is the head of the FISC, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, he penned and issued an order ruling that at least 2 of the warrants were, quote, not valid. On January 7th, 2020. We got it later because it was released later. It was not released when he wrote it. Doesn't work that way when it's the other side of these stories. Anything and everything leaks immediately when it was something to make that would politically damage Donald Trump. Whether it was true or not, that was completely irrelevant, obviously. The unlawful application submitted on April 7th was personally signed by fired former FBI Director James Comey, while the unlawful application on June 29th was signed by Mr. McCabe, also who was fired. That's another thing worth noting. Rod Rosenstein accused Andrew McCabe of not being candid or lying to him about what was in the FISA warrant. What was the results of, what were the findings of the FBI, how they were conducting themselves. He claims that is not true. Andrew McCabe is saying that Rod Rosenstein is lying. So somebody is lying. Somebody is being thrown under the bus here, right? I can only tell you that Andy McCabe was only in one of these back and forths, because there's been a few now, where McCabe says one thing and somebody else says another. In the case of James Comey, specifically about whether or not he was authorized to leak to the Wall Street Journal about the investigation into the Clinton Foundation, James Comey said he never gave him the permission to do that. And he said that he did. Well, I can tell you they decided not to charge Andy McCabe. He gave up first to the Senate, and then he offered it to the U.S. Attorney in the District of Columbia that he had emails proving James Comey is a liar and he is telling the truth. He got the approval to leak those stories, that story specifically, but there were others that were in question as well. I can only say for certainty that his lawyer offered Chuck Grassley and the U.S. District Attorney emails, email proof that James Comey did in fact direct him to do that, give him authorization at least. So, I can't say that that means he's not, that we should believe him over Rod Rosenstein, because in the end, this is what the take is with Rod Rosenstein, okay? First of all, there's a couple lessons here to be learned. But here's the take. Here's the truth. The guy is part coward and part complicit. That is the deal with Rod Rosenstein. His emails tell the story. And if you have time to go through them, we can't go through them all. I'm summarizing what they say for you. They say he was under an enormous amount of pressure. He's a coward and he buckled. Whether or not he knew the investigation was BS or not. The man was being bombarded by many of the people you hear, about, if you know this story. And he caved to that pressure. It is fair to say he caved to that pressure. However, because he was meeting with Robert Mueller, I'm leaning towards complicit. It doesn't really matter, in my opinion, because he's part complicit and part coward. His emails tell the story. He was being pressured heavily by DC elites. But being a coward does not excuse or absolve you or anyone of wrongdoing. If you are being forced to commit a crime and you still commit it, believe me, they're not going to let you off. If somebody said, you know what, I robbed this bank with us or we're going to kick your butt, and you're afraid of these guys, and they force you to go rob the bank, you cannot go to the judge and say, Judge, I'm afraid of these guys, so I just went along with it. You'll be charged as a co-conspirator. You're not going to let you off for that. That's not going to fly. So it doesn't really matter. But if you read those emails again, I'm telling you, I'm leaning towards complicit, because there was no reason for him to be secretly meeting with Mueller, intentionally deceiving the boss, unless they were doing and talking about something that was wrong. And nobody yesterday asked that question. Nobody. That would have been one of the first questions that I would have asked. On May 13th, 2017, you wrote, the boss and his staff do not know about our discussions on May 12th. Excuse me. The boss and his staff do not know about our discussions. You wrote to Robert Mueller on May 12th. And then I'd read the rest. What were you discussing? Why didn't you want your boss to know? We could have got to the bottom of this a lot better yesterday, but I expect nothing less from the Republican cowards in Washington, D.C. At this point, talk about complicity. They're just as complicit. They allowed this witch hunt. They allowed these people to subvert a duly elected administration. And I would be just as pissed off if this was Barack Obama. To me, it doesn't matter. The man was elected by the voters. The voters are sovereign. That's it. If you choose to ignore what happened here, you're digging your own grave. You're digging the graves for your children. You're saying we care less about being free than we do about, settling political scores or getting our way like little babies. Maybe you do, But I wonder what your children and grandchildren will think of you for allowing this. I wonder if one day we're under a total police state, what they'll think of you when their uncle, a political dissident, is drugged from his house like it used to be in some of these countries, Russia, Cuba, that they're trying to turn us into. Because this is the kind of crap that happened in the Soviet Union. Alan Dershowitz was right about this all along. The head of Stalin's secret police, best known for saying, you show me a man, you show me the man, I'll show you the crime. That's what happened here. It happened to Donald Trump himself. It happened to Michael Flynn. 3 decades of service to this country, and that's how we repaid him. We should be ashamed of ourselves. And Republicans on Capitol Hill who allowed this to happen should be ashamed of themselves too. We all should. We should be. It's really, aside from the riots and stuff, all of that, that already is enough to give you a heavy heart. But this is not what is supposed to happen in this country. Ted Cruz was right. Richard Nixon was rightfully punished for what he did. And this doesn't even come close. What he did does not even come close to this. This is on a whole new level. This is a whole new level of corruption. And it's not supposed to happen here. It's just not. All right. Well, look, it's 10:51. I wanted to continue. You know what I'll do? For 10 minutes, we'll talk about it is terrifying. It should scare the hell out of everybody. And Republicans, the problem with turning to Republicans for help is that who is the chairman of the Intelligence Committee right now? Marco Rubio, the man who just blamed right-wing extremists for these riots. That's ridiculous. He had no evidence of that. He's full of crap. He's the new Mitt Romney, this guy. As soon as he said, it reminded me of when Mitt Romney came out and said, you cannot draw, it's a false moral equivalency to compare Antifa to neo-Nazis. Yeah, I agree. Just not the way you think. Left-wing radicals, they are responsible for far more deaths by government than Hitler ever was. Mao, Stalin, Pol Pot, even Castro. Hitler was an amateur in genocide and democide compared to those people. An amateur. It is a false moral equivalency. Just you have it totally backwards. Completely. So now Rubio is the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, and Lindsey Graham, a lifelong defender, protector, and enabler of the military-industrial complex and the security state, the police state. That is who's supposed to root out this corruption? Are you freaking kidding me? Is that what you people really expect? I hope not. Because the guy is singing a song he knows you want to hear right now. But he could have buried Rod Rosenstein yesterday. Buried him. You think Adam Schiff wouldn't have gotten a hold of those emails that I just read to you? Of course he would have. If the roles were reversed, of course he would have. Am I meant to believe Lindsey Graham doesn't know about them? And if we were to tell him, he'd call him back to talk about it? Come on. Come on. You're going to have to do this yourself, is my point. You're going to have to do this yourself. All right? Let's talk about Mattis too. Yeah, I would. He is. Look, Adam. That's a great point. I just read. Sometimes I peek back and I look at what you guys are writing. And yeah, Adam Housley. He does good work. He is. I'll tell you right now. I know the guy is talking to the right people. Graham is not going to be the man who will deliver you from the corrupt police state. And a lot of this is Donald Trump's own fault because he surrounded himself with a bunch of idiots. Alabama came in. They took the reins from Chris Christie when this administration was transitioning. Christie made a dumb mistake, and he had a couple, Trump promised in his plan to drain the swamp in Gettysburg that he first spoke about in Gettysburg on the campaign trail. I'm sure many of you will remember this. That is the first time he issued a 10-point plan to drain the swamp. And he promised that nobody who worked for him would be allowed to hire lobbyists. There would be a lobbyist ban. Chris Christie did something stupid. And, he was just trying to find the right people who knew. But, that was not the way Trump had promised to do things. So using that and other things, Team Alabama were able to, wrest control of who was going to become the law enforcement apparatus in this administration. I will tell you right now, Chris Christie this would not have flown under Chris Christie as Attorney General. No way. I have a 10-point plan to drain my bank account. You guys are funny. That's funny stuff. Yeah, but it would not have happened under Chris Christie. It just wouldn't have. He would not have let it go. Bill Barr wouldn't have let this go. Who the hell knew, right? Who the hell knew? But this investigation wrapped up after, Sessions had already been gone. Rod Rosenstein was left acting as the Attorney General, given that he was the deputy. And in the end, that left when he was gone, and Bill Barr was confirmed and brought into the Justice Department. The only reason why Rod Rosenstein was left on was to play the role of SHIELD. They had that meeting, and that was another interesting exchange. And I was trying to get it, but frankly just ran out of time. But that's also noteworthy about the decision not to charge Donald Trump or anybody with obstruction of justice between Dianne Feinstein and Rod Rosenstein, the back and forth. And he said rightfully, which I was like, when she asked, I was on the edge of my seat because I know multiple witnesses were in that room. Bill Barr, Rod Rosenstein, Robert Mueller, and a few career prosecutors. And they all decided that there was nothing there. Now, Robert Mueller really didn't decide. He was just sitting there, he kicked it to them like a coward. He kicked it to them. And even Rod Rosenstein said, this isn't obstruction of justice. This is a man pissed off that he's been harassed and persecuted for years. When there's nothing there, when in the end, there was no collusion. Now, had they found collusion, it would have given evidence that Trump was trying to hide something. But in the end, all it had to do with was all in the end, all it had to do with was a man who was just pissed off about being innocently, being accused falsely of these crimes. All right. So he told Dianne Feinstein that everybody was in agreement. And Dianne Feinstein tried to twist it, turn around, and he stayed fast. But that's why he was kept on, because that decision, everybody knew what they were trying to do. Again, they knew in August of 2017, there was no such thing as collusion. It was bullshit. It was bunk. And they kept going anyway. So that only tells you it was ever a perjury check. And they kept going. So he needed to use Rod Rosenstein as a shield. Otherwise, if it was just all of these new people that were being accused of covering up, they would have ripped Barr to pieces in the headlines. Barr came in, he sidestepped Rod Rosenstein, they kicked him out, they made clear for them cover up for Trump's corruption. That's what you would have heard. And just to answer what somebody had said, he does have to do with who is approved and who is put in there. He's operating, yes, Trump is operating within the bounds of who can get through the Senate. But Rod Rosenstein sailed through in confirmation. He sailed through. Oh, that's the other lesson before the end of the segment comes. I want you to remember. Every time the media, the political class, the media, everybody tells you, somebody's like, oh, you cursed. You never cursed. What? If I did, I'll mark it on the thing later. Everybody tells you, and yeah, I don't usually, but anytime they'll tell you, like James Comey during the Hillary Clinton email investigation, what did we hear? James Comey's a straight shooter. Everybody says he's a straight shooter. Everybody says he'll shoot this thing right. And even, by the way, Chris Christie said that. He's since withdrawn it because he knew Jim Comey when he was a U.S. attorney. He said he's changed. But that's what we heard from for James Comey. Rod Rosenstein, same thing. And he sailed right through. Oh, that's the prosecutor in Maryland. Yeah, everybody's got a great opinion of him. A straight shooter. Christopher Wray, a straight shooter. This word comes back. He's a straight up guy. Every single time we've heard that, it has been a load. Robert Mueller, another one. Oh, yeah, he picked the right guy for the job. See, that's why Rod Rosenstein got approved almost unanimously, because he'll make the decisions, he'll make the right decisions, and he'll play it fair. Those who knew Robert Mueller knew that was a load. Robert Mueller has never been known to shoot things straight. He's always been known as somebody who favors the police state apparatus. This is a man who used 9/11, who used the fear of 9/11 to suck up police power you never would have given him. That's a great comment, Laura. Yeah, they're straight shooters, all right. They'll shoot you right in the back. They'll shoot you right in the back when you're not looking. So let that be a warning to all of you. All of your radars should go up next time you hear somebody's a straight shooter. The left and the right are in agreement. Or the left and the right in DC anyway. They're in agreement. Let that be a lesson to you. They're straight shooters, all right. Right, Laura. Shoot you right in the back when you're not looking. That's a great way to put it. Couldn't have put it better myself. That's why I took it. And it is now 11:02. When we come back, I did want to talk about Mattis. So question being, should I break for or, and then talk about Mattis when we come back before I hit Michigan? Or should I hit Mattis first and then talk about it? What do you guys think? I'll give it to you guys. You guys want to take a break now, or you just want to get Mattis out of the way really quick? Because there is a story about Jim Mattis, or there's a backstory and that I'd like you to hear before we go. Yeah, let's take a break. Okay, let's take a break. Mattis, either way. Just as I thought it was going to be. Either way. All right, well, that favors Mattis then. That favors we keep going with Mattis. I'll take the break in a hot minute. All right. When Jim Mattis was, and this goes to what I was saying before, what a lot of this Trump, kind of brought on himself. I hate to say it, but it's flatly true. I'm trying just to make sure I get the dates right. I'm going to pull this up on PPD, but you can find this story on PPD. There's a few stories that mention it specifically, but there's why Trump replacing Mattis with Shanahan at the Pentagon matters. That's a good story that brings up this backstory. There's also flatly the story about him retiring at the end of that February, which was February of 2018. All right. I'm going to start with the Mattis story, but okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's the right thing to do. Let me go down here. Let's start with the story about when Mattis resigned. In the spring of 2018, the president called everybody together, his national security team, the national security advisor, his defense secretary, and his secretary of state. And they had a meeting in the Situation Room. And this was April of 2018. All right. And he sits everybody down and he says, number one, the covert operation that the CIA is running behind my back in Syria has got to stop. That's number one. Number two, Iran on bringing troops home. We still have Afghanistan that we have to untangle. He indicated at that moment that he would rather be focused on bringing the troops home from Afghanistan right now rather than still dealing with what was going on in Syria. And if you remember, they were trying to get him, like hell, they were trying to get him to start a war in Syria over chemical weapon attacks, including in Dawood, however you say that, which we now know from whistleblowers was most likely a false flag operation. It would not be, because of what I know, it would not shock me at all to learn that the CIA planted those canisters and did that themselves so they could tell the world that Assad was gassing his own people. It wouldn't shock me, because when Trump first told them to drop it, to stop that covert operation, they did not listen. So what was the CIA doing there? They were trying to topple the regime of Bashar al-Assad. Publicly, the United States, and this is true under Barack Obama too, the United States government has been trying to topple this regime for a while covertly. Publicly, they have told you that this is about rooting out ISIS and preventing more death from the civil war, even though they really want, but they never really told you, well, which side do you want to get? Are we just trying to kill ISIS and we're going to leave Assad? Or is this Assad bad too and he's got to go? Rand Paul was always right about that. They wanted to use ISIS as a way to topple Assad, so to maintain our presence there so they could get rid of Bashar al-Assad. And when Trump was telling them, I'm not going to allow this, we're there to defeat ISIS and ISIS alone. At first, they just flatly didn't listen. And then secondly, miraculously, the chemical gas attacks started to happen, which is why I'm telling you that it would not shock me at all to hear that's what happened. All right. So anyway, though, to stick to the story, he tells them in this meeting in the Situation Room in the spring of 2018, in April of 2018, that I'm tired of saying this. Get the CIA out of there. Stop doing their covert operation. And number two, start making plans to remove these troops. We have decimated ISIS. They're done. At the time, I think it was an estimated like 1,500 ISIS soldiers. They were rocked. And he said, I want them out. Bring the U.S. away take them out of Syria. And the next time we have a discussion like this, I want to be talking about how to remove the troops from Afghanistan. That's it. Syria will be in the rear view mirror. Mattis had a canary, and he wasn't the only one. Mattis had a canary. And most concerning to Mattis was not even that they were basically busted on what they were doing in Syria, but that he knew Trump was going to turn his direction to Afghanistan next. When Trump removes H.R. McMaster, who wanted forever war everywhere, the lobbying to take John Bolton began. And there was that was twofold. To go after people like me who were, not just, but in the media, people who would be skeptical of somebody like John Bolton, skeptical of somebody like John Bolton because of his past with Iraq. And there began this lobbying campaign. And I mean, there's emails from people, from friends saying he's no longer a neocon. He's a textbook realist Donald Trump himself is. And he learned his lessons from Iraq because they saw the handwriting on the wall with H.R. McMaster and they wanted to put somebody else in there. They wanted to install somebody else who would advocate Mattis's and other people's position to stay in the Middle East, particularly Syria and Afghanistan. They lose this argument, okay, by around October, November. It really becomes clear of that year, that the fall of that year. So he says this in spring. This meeting takes place in spring, but he doesn't budge. Even though there's been some setbacks to bringing the troops home, he doesn't budge. And by October, November, it's getting pretty clear that their argument is losing. By Christmas time of that year, Mattis is already starting to subvert publicly. And then, well, I'm thinking I'm going to leave. Trump tries to do it in a nice way because he knows what's happening. And when he says, I've learned my lesson not to fire people, this is part of that. The Tillersons. Now with Mattis, John Bolton. Mattis is now circling around. Comparing him with the Nazis. It's crazy. Saying he does nothing. He's the first president in our history who doesn't try to unite us. Now, I even criticized Donald Trump on not doing what most presidents have done after election. I would have told him to do things differently. The Republican Party had a chance to effectively kneecap the Democratic Party for 20, 30 years. But they didn't do what they should have done to do so, and that would have required reaching out to people that make them uncomfortable to bring them into the fold. Trump tried to do that from Trump Tower during the transition. He got a lot of blowback. The people that he met with, they got criticized heavily, and he stopped. He shouldn't have stopped. That's my point. He should have, not only should he not have stopped, he should have ramped it up. So now it leaves him open for these criticisms, from people like Mattis. In any event, the story behind this here is, and what you need to know, is that the Trump administration has always been this push and pull between the more interventionist wing of the mainstream Republican establishment and the new America First wing, which is represented by the president. And the primary objective in Syria publicly had been to defeat ISIS, the Islamic State. But that was never the true objective, and definitely not for the hawkish wing of the regime. Definitely not for even the elements of the military state under Barack Obama. Their real objective was to remove Syria's president, Bashar al-Assad, why? He was backed by Russia and Iran. That was the true objective. And then the idea, the prospect of bringing troops home from Afghanistan and engaging in peace talks with the Taliban gave them like an angina attack. Like these people, that was like their worst nightmare. That is their war. That is their war that they've been able to wage since 9/11. So, see, even by the way, this is not just our own reporting. Even CNN reported that the president declared right before he left that the U.S. and he did. We covered this too. That the U.S. would withdraw the military from Syria, and he did so without the consent of his more hawkish advisors. So when Trump made that declaration, which was around, I think it was like December 15th, when he went out and made that declaration, they didn't know that was coming. He just did it because he had told them before. For Trump, it was like, I told you 8 months ago. Do you think I was joking? I don't need to alert you when I'm going to go. I told you 8 months ago to get ready for this. And this is what they acted shocked about, acted horrified about when he did. And even CNN reported the more hawkish faction who were aligned, they were allies of Secretary Mattis, are concerned that a similar announcement regarding Afghanistan is imminent. And that is, that was present day, context. At that time, that's what even CNN reported. So, I'm not pulling this stuff out of thin air. This is how it happened. In Afghanistan, the longest war in U.S. history began in 2001, almost immediately after the attacks on September 11, 2001. President Trump has long criticized continued U.S. involvement. There were, at the time, still 14,000 U.S. troops serving in that country, most of whom part of the seemingly never-ending NATO-led mission to train, advise, and assist Afghanistan forces. It's worth noting that President Trump campaigned on defeating ISIS and then, quote, getting the hell out of there. The most recent estimates at that time, and I knew I was roughly in the ballpark because now I'm reading from the story we did, but at that time, the most recent estimates of how many members the former caliphate had was less than 2,000. So I think before I said 1,500 or something. Ballpark. And at that time too, and we covered this as well, the amount of opium coming out of that country. And you know what? Before I take, it's 11:15. I'll look for it during the break and I'll mention it quickly before we get into Michigan. But at that time, folks, we did a story on opium exports in Afghanistan before the invasion in Afghanistan leading up to present day. And we can do that because the UN does a report on it every year. It lags. So you don't get the report for you get the report for the prior year. And you'd be stunned. And when we come back from the break, I'm actually going to dig that story up just to wrap up this. But this is what Mattis is arguing for. Forever war and continuing to let drugs flow into our country. This is what they do. This is the world they've created. You'll be stunned when you find out how much opium from Afghanistan came into this country before. And you wonder why we have an opioid problem. Everyone blames the pharmaceutical companies. Of course, they have a share in the blame. There's no doubt. So do the doctors who prescribed and overprescribed them. Those of you who know me or have heard me talk about this before, you know this is an issue near and dear to my heart. But there's another element to this too. Another element. All right. And that is the illicit import and export of this drug from these countries that we have spent now billions and billions and billions of dollars on. And it's a little funny that they didn't have the means to bring in this amount of opium until we came along. So take that how you will. We'll be back in a hot minute, folks. It's 11:17. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a night, just to give into the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a
All right, it is 11:20 on Thursday, June 4th. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am the People's Pundit, Rich Barris. You guys can follow me on Twitter if you don't already, at Peoples_Pundit right there. Don't forget to like the page on Facebook and subscribe to the YouTube channel. All right. Yeah, I know. I'm hearing a lot about that earlier. I see you guys have some lags. I will answer that question. I will leave time at the end. I'm going to kind of blow past this right now with the opium production. I just think it's important before we move on. I'm not going to even bring it up. I'm going to go quickly through it. I just want you guys to hear these numbers, because if Mattis and others got their way, okay, we'd be doing this forever, folks. We'd be doing this forever. And not only is nothing getting better, but things have gotten a lot worse since since we invaded this country. And the opioid problem has, again, only gotten worse. So basically, this was at that time when it was a week. We did this report a week after Trump declared the U.S. would take troops out of Syria. And he did so without the consent of Mattis and his other hawkish advisors. All right. They were concerned that a similar decision in Afghanistan would be imminent. Mattis at this time was set to leave his post at the end of February. If you remember, he really didn't even make it. The longest war in U.S. history began after the attacks on 9/11. Trump ran on and has long criticized U.S. involvement in the Middle East. And he did talk about illicit drug trades and prioritizing that problem over foreign intervention. After more than 17 years, and at this time it was 17 years, deploying at peak more than 100,000 troops, sacrificing the lives of 2,400 U.S. soldiers at that time, spending more than $1 trillion on military operations, more than $100 billion on nation building or funding an army of 350,000 Afghan soldiers, opium production in Afghanistan has never been more robust than it was last year. And this was for the 2017 annual opium survey from the UN Office of Drugs and Crime, UNODC. All right. They found a record high 9,000 metric tons for the year, rising 87% compared with 2016. Increased insurgency and funding for terrorist groups is likely within Afghanistan, while more high-quality, low-cost heroin will reach consumer markets across the world, leading to increased consumption. They blame the Taliban for it and the trade in Afghanistan. Blaming them has become the common narrative for Western corporate big media, but it conveniently omits the fact that the trend was headed in the right direction prior to the invasion by U.S. and coalition forces. Prior to 2001, Afghanistan had already been the world's leading illicit opium producer, having claimed that title back in 1992. But Taliban leader Mullah Muhammad Omar declared growing Papaver somniferin, which is the opium poppy, to be un-Islamic in July of 2000. The result was one of the world's most successful anti-drug campaigns ever waged. That's no small part due to how the Taliban enforced the ban on poppy farming, which was threats, eradication, and public punishment. But Afghanistan saw a 99% reduction in the area of opium poppy opium poppy farming in Taliban-controlled areas, which represented at the time 75% of the world's supply of heroin. In 2001, Afghanistan produced approximately 180 metric tons of opium. 1 year after the Allied invasion, opium production swelled to more than 3,000 metric tons. According to UN estimates dating back to 2010, opium harvested in Afghanistan produces now more than 90% of the world's illicit heroin and more than 95% of the illicit supply that is bound for Europe. Those are outdated estimates, to be sure. They've increased, even with the cartel trafficking in Mexico and in South America. But again, the number here, before the Allied invasion, Afghanistan only produced 180 metric tons of opium. In 2017, it swelled to 3,000 a year after the invasion and was 9,000 in 2017. Folks, that's a lot of opium. That is a ton of opium, and that is a huge rate of increase. It's astonishing. And yet, people continue to advocate for a continuous war in this area of the world that clearly, whether you want to blame coalition troops or not, the fact of the matter is, this problem was not this big until we came along. Now, you know how some people will take that. Oh, the CIA helps them. Maybe. I mean, one day maybe I'll tell you some stories, one day. I would think you'd have to be naive to believe otherwise. Frank Lucas, who was he was the first African-American gangster to sell his wholesale product to the Italian mob in the tri-state area. He used military assets to get the drugs in this country. I think you'd be a little bit naive to pretend as if nobody has a hand in that. But that is what people like Jim Maness, that's what they're advocating for. That's what they're advocating for. All right. Now let's get into voter fraud in Michigan. And I did tell people that I would let them know when we got to this segment. I understand a bunch of guys don't have 2 hours to sit around and listen to it. That's why we segment this stuff out. So give me a hot minute. That's why you'll see me do what I'm doing right now, which is getting to the voter file in Michigan now. We'll get to this now, and it's 11:26. I will have some time to answer some questions. This won't take that long. I know that, look, all I can tell you guys, if you're having a buffering issue, head on over to Facebook, head on over to YouTube. That is the place that I can tell you, I know the stream will be better. There is a ton of people using this stuff, even still. I would have thought a lot of these, you saw that? I would have thought that a lot of these services, people would have gone back to work. That didn't. There seems in this new jobless claims number that came out today, and if we have some time, I'll go over it, but there seems to be something I didn't like, which means maybe like a contraction of the overall labor force. The insured unemployment rate went back up a little bit, not much, but a little bit, about a half of a percentage point. And the number of long-term unemployed, it did not continue to come down as the trend had been before. That is showing me maybe it won't continue. It's just 1 week. Let's hope so. But it's telling me what I thought, which was there's going to be some people who just will choose not to return back to work, and will choose, if they are able to stay home. So that's just an unfortunate reality. But I'd rather we're doing this week about the potential for voter fraud. So I would rather get to that than the Rosenstein hearing was so important, folks, that I had to spend that much time on it. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how much time we got. But let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. You guys can barely see that number. But let's go to Michigan, as we've been talking about all this week. Okay. Rona just tweeted out, Rona McDaniel, the chairwoman of the RNC. She just tweeted out, Elizabeth Hamilton, I think her name is. If I get your name wrong, my bad. But she had an op-ed in CNN about voter fraud and says, the media says it's not, that it doesn't exist and we shouldn't believe it. But look what has happened in just 1 week. And they discussed a lot of the things that we have been discussing. Like I said, I'm not going to go rooting for it. I'm only looking at what is in the current debate. Where are Democrats suing to be able to change election law because of the coronavirus? They're using coronavirus to change election law. Where are Democrats suing to do that? And then where are Republicans suing to stop them? And we did Nevada, Pennsylvania, and then from the story that we went over earlier in the week, that there are other efforts in other states, such as Florida and Michigan. In Florida, they want to count ballots after Election Day like they were able to do against state election law in 2018 before it was shut down. But they nevertheless were still allowed to get a lot of those provisional ballots in the box, even though they should not have ever have been counted. Again, bipartisan law after the hanging Chad of 2000, Florida, both Republicans and Democrats, overwhelmingly bipartisan legislation to make sure that our elections were not the laughingstock of the world again. And they're trying to undo a lot of that. One of the things they're trying to do, of course, is remove verification standards and practices. So one of them being a big one, being signature verification, signature match, which we do in Florida. If your signature does not match, you will not get the ballot, or you will have to file a provisional one, and then the supervisor of elections will put together the board, and they will go through the ballots and decide whether or not those votes should be counted. In Michigan, we got a ruling in Pennsylvania, and in Michigan, though, still ongoing. So let's look at Michigan. The question here is whether or not what Democrats are asking to do will allow ballots to be mailed to people who are inactive for whatever reason. Maybe they haven't voted in so long, nobody knows, so they're inactive. Nobody knows if their record is correct anymore. If it ever was even a valid record, that could absolutely be a possibility. And then, of course, whether they're dead, whether the dead, people who are dead and on the voter roll still, will receive a ballot. And then what we call change of address flags, which are movers, people who have moved, whether recently or whatever else. According to the Voter Registration Act of 1993, states are supposed to go through their rolls periodically and clean their voter rolls. They don't do it. Some do a better job than others. Some barely do it at all. We showed you Nevada the first time. That was the first one in the series on Tuesday. That was among one of the worst examples that we could show you. Not only are there 200,000 in Clark County alone, which represents 68% of the vote, or did in 2016, roughly 70% of the vote in the state total will come from Clark County. There are not only are there 200,000 roughly that should not have gotten a ballot, but the overall dirt in the voter file, Clark County represents 80% of it. So even if it was a more fair ruling where all counties would be able to mail out to everyone, and then if Republicans wanted to do what Democrats do, hire ballot harvesters to fill them in, and there's no signature match to verify that it's the correct person, it wouldn't be enough for Republicans to make up the difference. Because what we have found, and we saw in Pennsylvania as well, and we're going to see it here again today in Michigan, what we have found is that the problem is greater in Democratic areas. The rolls are dirtier in Democratic areas. There are two reasons for that. One, populations are greater in urban areas. Those are Democratic strongholds. Big cities are Democratic strongholds, and urban and metro even now. But that's not the only reason. The Secretary of State himself or herself, when they go to carry out these orders, when they go to comply with the MVRA of 93, they don't do it themselves. They pass it down to either, in our state, it's supervisors of elections. Some of them have registrars. That's what they call them, like the Clark County Registrar. And it is the job of election officials locally to scrub their rolls, to clean. Scrub is a bad term. I just fell into that trap. That's a garbage BS propaganda word. The better word is clean. It is up to the local election officials to clean their voter rolls. And what we see traditionally is that red areas will do a better job. So here is Michigan. Statewide, we're looking at individual records. Individuals meaning a person. We're not looking by household. All right. And you can actually see that there's 7.7 million voters. Individuals, we're looking at about 7 million, just under 6.98. 6,979,982. All right. That is with the data types that we're selecting here from the voter file. You guys can see that, right? When I highlight that. Yep, you can see it. The data type being demographics. There are different data types. There's party, vote history, mail, email, phone, models, micro-targeting, geospatial, custom searching, deduping, snippets. You can write your own snippet. If you're familiar with software engineering, you know what I'm talking about when I say it's a query. We're querying a database here. We're forming boundaries of the query, and we're returning the total for those boundaries. We're defining the query and returning a total. The data type is demographics here for both, excluding the dead and excluding movers. They have a change. The data point for movers is they have a change of address flag. Maybe they recently moved or they no longer live there. All right. And then the other data point is dead. They are deceased. Right now, because by default, you should always exclude these. If I'm going to run a poll in Michigan right now, all right, I'm going to go to check out, maybe I want the whole state. There's the whole individuals. I would normally do better selections. I would say high connect lines, meaning I know that the line will connect, people pick up more often, right? Which, by the way, could, if you don't do it correctly, will skew towards Democrats because they're more likely to take surveys than conservatives are. So that is one of the many inherent built-in biases in a polling methodology. All right, so include mobile phones where available. I would set my parameters here. And then I would say search all records, search a random sample, a targeted random sample. Maybe I'll be able to make it look like the electorate if I wanted to, or normalize random sample, cluster, random, just a regular random. And then they'll ask me which one. Maybe I want like 100,000 of them. All right, that's how a poll is conducted. And then I'd hit check out. I'd pull the list, buy it. It would build it, take a little bit to build it. It would export it as a CSV file, and I would upload it to my polling software. That's how this is done. Building panels, I would hit that, yes, I only want to include people who have a mail and a mail email address on their voter file. I would match it to the individual to make damn sure that I'm not, like me and Laura and I, we live in the same household. You're not going to email me to try to get Laura to sign up for a panel, right? You don't want them to cross. So there's a couple little things you've got to know. It comes with the territory, comes with experience in the profession. You got to know these things. That's why I tell you there's just too many polls and not enough pollsters. There are these new people popping up everywhere. They don't know. They don't have years of experience. They don't know what the hell they're doing. Anyway, so now we have, let's take a look at that number one more time. 6,979,982. That is if we're looking at a clean electorate, or at least we're trying to. We're excluding dead and movers. See, it's checked here. Let's exclude them now. Let's run it again. So is Rona right? How right is Rona? It's going because it's a big database. Okay. So you see now we were just under 7 million before when we excluded the dead and we excluded people with a change of address flag. Now you can see there's almost 1 million more people on those rolls. 7,741,946. Again, when I tell you there is a difference between being registered to vote and being eligible to vote, this is what I mean. Donald Trump won the state of Michigan by 10,000 votes. There are almost 1 million people. Not people. There are almost 1 million records. There will be almost 1 million ballots of people who should never vote getting sent out. And if you have ballot harvesters who are activists They are not supervised by anybody. They're ideologues. You know they are. What is the likelihood that they will harvest those ballots? Well, I would submit to you, you're an idiot if you think they're not going to do that. Of course they're going to do it. Again, we just now returned a number that is about 800,000 more than the number when we excluded the dead and excluded people who were movers, recent movers. Before, when we had just the dead, when we excluded dead people and we excluded people who have change of address flags, it was about just under 7 million. 6,900,000 and change. Just for those who are just tuning in, because I see it popped. That means there are about 800,000 ballots that could be harvested that should never be counted. Never. And the way to get around this, of course, make it easier is to remove the verification procedures, such as signature matching, which is what all of these Democratic lawsuits are requesting. All right? They're not just saying mail out the ballot to everybody. They're not saying that. They're saying mail out the ballot to everybody and make sure that we don't have signature verification or other verification methods. There is no good reason to request that unless you're intentionally trying to make sure ballot harvesters have an extra stash if they need it. All right, let's take out the rest of the state. Let's go to jurisdiction and geography. Let's go to county. I think you guys know where I'm headed with this. Wayne County is where Detroit is. Let's take a look at Wayne County. And let's just isolate Wayne County from those results. Let's get a number and we're going to compare it. 1,342,341. So actually, I did the math a little bit wrong there. Wayne County's rolls are very, very dirty. Let me just make sure that this is still, let's exclude the deceased and exclude the movers, just to have a comparison. Okay, so that's actually more accurate. I was going to say before, it's a little bit more than I would have expected. Donald Trump again won the state of Michigan by 10,000 votes. And there are easy, and what they're saying is, because it does change based on the query, easy, you can assume that there is 10 times Donald Trump's margin of victory in Wayne County alone that should not vote. Or at least they should be subject to verification standards. Okay, let's look at only the dead, because some people say, well, they could have moved, and that's it. Let's get rid of Wayne County. Let's do statewide. All right, go to all. Take a look at the entire state. All right. Now let's do, it was excluding it. That's what it does. I guess because it's default, it wants to check itself back again. Because that is not a good polling practice. First of all, you're going to pull records of people you'll never reach. If they've moved, they may have changed their number. It's likely. If they're dead, you cannot reach them. All right, so that's what we got statewide. Let's just not exclude the dead. And let's see how much that number jumps. From just alone 6.9 to what? 6.999. So about 100,000, a little over 100,000. That's remarkable. Again, there are 10 times the number of Donald Trump's margin of error in the state of Michigan that they could get. And this is what's important here, because the fact checkers, Trump didn't say it right. And because he harps on these details that he gets wrong, he leaves an opening for them to do this. But in truth, the real beef is that, because he said, illegal aliens will get it. Well, if the state has a motor voter roll, if the state has motor voter laws, then you can rest assured that at least that is right. there are going to be illegal immigrants, whatever you want to call them, undocumented workers, illegal residents, whatever the heck you want to call them. That's going to be in there because based on not only our own research, others have done research on this as well. Motor voter is the top category when you actually get, because you can poll, they will talk to you. Yeah, I was actually shocked how they did. Motor voter was the number one explanation for how they ended up registering to vote. Second was outreach of some kind of get out the vote, whether it was a political committee, a party, a committee, whatever it may have been, a PAC who funds, whatever. People contacted them from the political system to get them on the voter rolls. That's number two. Number one is motor voter. When you allow them to get driver's licenses, they go down to their DMV, whatever you call it, in your state, the Division of Motor Vehicle, they go to get their driver's license. The clerk or the paperwork will say, are you registered to vote? Do you want to register to vote? The clerk, nobody is allowed in most of these states to verify citizenship. They're actually not allowed to do it, especially in blue states, like New York and California. So, of course, they're going to get on the voter roll. But what Trump said, how he put it, because technically some of the stuff he said was wrong, the fact checkers were able to say, that's not true. Only those who are registered to vote are going to get ballots mailed to them. Well, I'm showing you right now what I mean when I say being registered is not the same thing as being eligible. And people who are dead, people who have moved, and people who should never have been on the roll to begin with because they are illegal and they do not have the right to vote, they absolutely are on these voter rolls. And anyone who tells you otherwise is either completely ignorant because they just drink the Kool-Aid or they intentionally lie to you. When it comes to some of these sources, I am telling you they're intentionally lying to you because they can do what I'm doing right now. They just choose not to show you what I'm showing you. I know many public pollsters who work for media outlets, personally and professionally. I know many who use the same company that I'm showing you right now. They know damn well what I'm saying is true. And if you remove verification procedures, which is the big one right now because it is effective, is signature match, then ballot harvesters are absolutely going to be able to submit these ballots. There's no doubt about it. If you're a smart ballot harvester, then you're going to look for people who are eligible, who just have not voted. Every election, there are a ton of people, because if, God forbid, there ever was an audit by somebody like me, if Mike Pence did his damn job leading that commission, either my phone would have rang or somebody like me who does what I do, their phone would have rang, and they would have said, we need you to do this. And I'm going to find those people. Well, maybe it's not their fault. Like I said, some of them are dead. Some of them moved and they're registered in another state. They're registered in what is now their home state. They're voting in their home state. They didn't request a ballot from Michigan or Nevada or wherever state we're talking about that's in question. They don't even know that it was requested. They don't know somebody submitted it for them. They would have no clue. So if you're a smart ballot harvester, you'd want to do those people who did not vote first, who are eligible to vote, because there's no more signature verification. And then sadly, you just have corrupt people like Mr. DeMuro and like Brenda Snipes and those who worked for her before she was ousted, thank the heavens, who just lie. Who is in charge of verification? They are. So if they say, yeah, that's a match. Sure. Yeah, that one matches too. Ring it up. Yeah. It's them. There's no oversight here. That's why, again, and I'm going to keep harping on this, is 10 minutes. I will leave some time. But that is why, if we do not do what I'm telling you folks over the last couple of days, we must do, there can never be election integrity. It's bad enough without what Democrats are trying to do now, which is make all of these records receive a ballot. And then on your dime, fund taxpayer-funded ballot harvesters who will go out and absolutely fill in these ballots and submit these ballots. They absolutely are going to do it, and they're going to make you pay for it. The only way to get around this, not even get around it, but to limit it greatly, it would take a lot, like I've said yesterday, in more detail. This is a serious problem. It is a complicated problem, and it will take a complicated, comprehensive solution. For starters, those people we identified right there in the voter file, that absolutely must be uploaded to a database. And when the machines submit the ballot, it must be connected to that database and they must match. And if there is a match, then that ballot, that person, whatever, must undergo more verification. Because it is going to be the case that, that maybe somebody got, we're talking about Michigan right now. Okay. So maybe somebody moved from Wayne County up north and they moved to like Southern Oakland or something. And they may have a change of address flag. It doesn't mean they're not eligible to vote in the state. But they did not update their voter record. So they would have to undergo that. And if everything wants to know, everything wants to, I was reading one of the questions. If everything matches, then that's fine. And they get to vote. But as you saw before, dead people alone are enough to steal an election in this state. Absolutely. 10 times over in one county, as I just proved to you. Donald Trump's margin of error was 10,000 votes. That's it. That's all. They could swamp that 10 times over. All right, Michigan. Does John James have any chance? Laura, I'm almost reluctant to answer this because we did some proposal work. I'm almost reluctant to answer this. This is why I don't know what I'm going to do with election projection this year, because it's just not ethical for me to comment on races. Even if it's a peripheral involvement. But I will say this, he's not doing what he's got to do now to win. In 2018, he thought he was going to win that thing by running on Fox News. He got a little bit smarter this time, but his state became one of the most restrictive states to be able to do what he must do. He did very well for a Republican candidate in Wayne County. He did very well. But he played on the fence when it came to Donald Trump. So what happened was his opponent got Hillary Clinton level turnouts in Clinton areas, and he did not in Trump areas. He could have caught her with how well he did in Wayne County if he would have ran it up like Donald Trump ran it up. But unfortunately for him, he didn't, because he was too much on the fence about whether or not he liked Donald Trump's tone or not. The working men and women of Michigan don't give a damn about Donald Trump's tone. They care about his results. Now, some in Southern Oakland might care about his tone. That's an area that absolutely is going to be key. They'll flag that, Deb. That's another question. That's a great question. Okay. And thank you for doing this for me, because this is why it's so much better having help, because I can't scroll through all of those things and keep my concentration. Deb wants to know, if she votes and someone mails in a ballot, will her vote count? Okay. If you vote, then you will get that ballot. The only other thing they could do is get like a provisional from you by whoever votes second. So like you could go there and claim and say, no, this is my signature. I did not hand that vote in. I know lots of instances where somebody's vote was taken. And in many cases, they signed a provisional ballot It didn't matter. It's too late. That's why do not give anybody your ballot. Even when Laura and I vote absentee here, which we have done often, we still make it a business to run down and hand in the ballot ourselves. Brenda Snipes opened about 150,000 absentee ballots in 2018 without supervision, which is against the law. Both parties must be there, must be present. She did it without supervision, and absentee ballots skew heavily Republican. So do not, I hand in my ballot. If I don't feed it through the machine, I hand in my ballot to the supervisor of elections. Do not give anyone your ballot. If somebody comes knocking to your door and says, well, you haven't handed in your ballot yet, then you should know, then you better vote, is my point, because then you're leaving the door open for them to maybe file a provisional or something in your name. You're leaving the door open. You should vote yourself. So your vote is counted and it will show that you have voted or not. See, some states are just better than others. In Florida, they've gotten wise to how they can get around it. Some stuff, they wait to see who did and did not vote. And if you don't request your ballot, say you don't request your absentee ballot, then you could be in their little pool. You might end up in the pit, they may end up in the Pitney Bowes room filling in your ballot if you don't go and vote. So if you get it, you request it, and you get it, then you better hand it in and hand it in yourself. Do not mail that vote back. That's where we're at in this world. I'm sorry, but that's where we are. Yeah, I will talk about that Fox News poll in Ohio. Look, I can't comment on every single poll. I will just tell you there are two pollsters that I find dubious. And I mean main pollsters. Well, three, really, that the media cites that I find dubious. Right now, outside of the Gillum plus 12 and, that CNN did, when Ann is polling for CNN, Ann Selzer, then I always pay. She's one of the best pollsters in the business. But they had that new one since they got rid of opinion. Some Pulse Research or whatever. ORC, Opinion Research Center, was their longtime pollster. They fired them after 2016. Their new pollster did not do particularly well in 2018. And we've been over this before in a show. They tried to use their ballpark accuracy in the House vote to make everybody think that they had fixed their problems. But their state polling was still horrid. That includes Fox News in Ohio. That includes everyone in Ohio. There was only one poll that showed, and it was in July, or I think it was July or August. I want to say July, that showed Mike DeWine beating Richard Cordray in Ohio. That was the NBC Marist poll, and it was taken in the summer before the election. And then afterward, they just heard it anyway, and they showed Richard Cordray leading. Fox, their state level polls with this new pollster, because they got rid of their bipartisan polling operation, which didn't do well. But I don't think they didn't do well because they were being, because there was anything particularly sinister there. I think they just didn't do well because it's hard to poll in this new era. It's not easy. But now they got this new one that I do not trust at all. Their polling methodologies absolutely favor liberals. Their internals look crazy. I think I take it with a grain. I never dismiss really anybody, but there are some that I find dubious and take with a grain. The other two are Monmouth and Quinnipiac. Quinnipiac at this point, aside from what I know about them, which is that in 2014, they were on Capitol Hill shopping their polling to Republicans. And in 2016, they were shopping it to the Democrats. By that, I mean meeting with people and trying to push their results to get them in the media. They were, they loved meeting with Paul Ryan in 2014. They loved meeting with Mitch McConnell, who would end up being the majority leader. And then all of a sudden things change. I find that fishy. And when you're that wrong, Nelson +7, Gillum +7, and you end up really wrong. I mean, out of the margin of error, wrong. Any responsible pollster should take a step back and say, I did something wrong. Monmouth, I heard some fishy stuff about in 2016 from another pollster who polls publicly for another college, by the way, and who knows them, and told me that he was not collecting an adequate number of responses. So if effectively, to get a representative sample, and effectively was, filling in the gaps, which I know it costs more money to make sure you do. Yeah, I would say that's pretty accurate, Jeffrey. It's not really, the polling that's wrong. It's the people that are doing it. There are too many polls and not enough pollsters. And then there's pressure on the pollster that did not exist many years ago. They know that their sponsor wants them to come to a certain conclusion. Laura will tell you she's been there every step of the way. I get pressure. Right, Laura? You're in the chat box with them. I get pressure on me when I get hired. They pressure you to come up with something. They want a press release. They want to do something with it. And they pressure. That's just all there is to it. Well, because in the end, they want that result. Look at how Chris Steyerwalt still has not explained himself from North Carolina in 2016. He claimed and told the nation, people like me who did things online were not quality, even though, yes, we were doing something different. We were doing something experimental. We were trying to evolve with the time. And he told everybody on Fox News every chance he got that was garbage, that they had the best quality polling, in the country. It doesn't shock me they come out Democratic favorable because they voter file poll, which is good. They lean towards cell phone collection, which is not. But in any event, online phone polling alone, whether it's live caller, even interactive voice response. But when you live caller somebody, whether it's to their cell phone or to their landline, it is not uncommon that you're going to get 65-35 split between female and male. So you may think, well, I collected an accurate number, a representative number of Republicans, but your sample's more female. They'll take that, they'll weight it. You can oversample it until the cows come home. If you didn't reach enough people through different modes, so the participation rates were more equal, you really can't weight it. You can't extrapolate, which is what they do too. It's also the region. And they'll think, well, I got enough in the rural areas. That's why their polls are always like 55-35 in the rural areas. And on election day, they turn out to be 75-25 or 65-35. Yeah, that's a great point. Florida will be won by a very narrow margin. Donald Trump will be very difficult to beat in Florida, even if he loses the election. Biden is not up by 4 in Florida. Sorry. I hated when I had to release the poll showing Gillum up by 4 in Florida. That was the first one we did. In the end, DeSantis caught him. He caught him in the final few days. But I hated it because it was just, I know what I was looking at. There was just so many undecided votes. And when you poll Florida, because Democrats participate in higher numbers, you get those more sure answers. And unfortunately, those independents and Republicans and independents who lean Republican, often in a state like Florida, they don't tell you the way they're going until the final couple of days. And that stuff. But that's why I was cringing when I had to release that poll last cycle. Because I knew there was no way. If we had the vote today, there was no way. Because in the end, those people were going to decide. It was just a matter of how much they were going to move to DeSantis in the end. And they moved by a big enough margin to put them just over the top. Just over the top. I know. I'm 5 minutes over. All right, folks. Tomorrow we will wrap up our series because we have one more state. We will wrap up our series, which is about the potential for voter fraud. And we will do, of course, the soup du jour like we did today. But it's 12:05 and I'm over. So thanks for watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am the People's Pundit, Rich Barris. If you don't already, follow me on Twitter right there at Peoples_Pundit. If you guys haven't already, then don't forget to subscribe to PPD on YouTube, okay? We need to bust those subscriptions up. We're so close to our first milestone, all right? And then also, too, to like the page People's Pundit Daily on Facebook. When we go to the outgoing theme song, I will put both links in there, and I'll do it correctly this time because I missed apparently a Y yesterday. But yeah, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. Don't forget to like on Facebook. And ultimately, the best way to support the show and the work is to subscribe to PPD. You can do that by going to ppdnews.us/subscribe. ppdnews.us/subscribe. Or you could just go to peoplespunditdaily.com and pick the digital subscription or credit tier that suits you best. We love you for it, all that you do. Thanks for watching, and we will see you again tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. All the best, folks. All the best.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
And take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to disappear for a night, just to give into the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away.